Marty Supreme is a moment. It is a moment in culture. It is a moment in the American ethos. It is a moment that culture needed. And it might be one of the most important American films made in the last decade. Now, I'm not talking about this with a script or with anything. I'm, procuring this basically off of instinct and what I saw when I went to the theater. Because Timothée Chalamet, he convinced me to go to the theater. Hats off to them and the marketing team to get people to go see this. But, at its core, Marty Mauser isn't a guy. The lead character, Marty Mauser, played by Timothée Chalamet, is not just a guy. He is an idea. He's a larger idea representing the entirety of the young American man and woman and what they would do for success. America's a country that kind of puts you in that rock and hard place, in my opinion, to where you have to claw and scratch to try to get to where you want to go at the expense of others, maybe. And it creates this kind of ideology of loud, boisterous, bravado that, you kind of need to survive here. And it being set in the 1950s is the perfect representation of this idea because that was the birth of the American dream. And when juxtaposed with the post-war Japan that was the quote-unquote rival of Mr. Mauser, it shows, the contrast between the respectful, quiet, we're just going to do what we do and unite society that is Japan, and the loud, arrogant American that comes in and tries to, shake everything up. And I think that that's a very important moment because, there's nothing new under the sun, per se. And I think we're in that kind of headspace now with all these people on the internet, trying to maximize everything and optimize everything. And, I'm the best, you're the best, I'm the best. Then that ideology, it can't last forever. You're going to hit a brick wall at some point, right? I would think you hit a brick wall at some point. And I think that this is on the precipice of a new renaissance, where people, say, hey, maybe this isn't the end-all be-all, my success. And that's what, if you have seen the film, the end scene represents, he starts off with, impregnating his girlfriend, and at the end he becomes a father, and all that stuff in the middle, it doesn't matter because it's not about you at the end of the day. It ends up becoming, about the human race. And at the time of, birth rates declining, all this stuff, I think that that's an important message that a lot of people in my generation needed to see. Because personally, I was getting kind of worried, just as a guy who seems to be somewhat observant, maybe not the most observant, but somewhat observant throughout my day-to-day life. It feels very bleak, and I think we can all agree that it feels like we're living in a massive conspiracy, and that, we needed something like this to maybe give us a wake-up call. And the fact that it's, gaining this much traction and attention is good because it's going to become the new American classic, and hopefully it's not misinterpreted like a movie like The Wolf of Wall Street where people think, oh, Marty Mauser, this is exactly what you want to do, yada, yada, yada. No. I think it's, about youth and about making mistakes and, the prolonging of the human race and the human spirit and realizing it's not all about you. It's not all about you. Everyone's got a dream, right? Everyone's got a dream. And in this overly narcissistic society that we have curated, I think it's an important message at its core. And by the way, the production design is amazing. The wardrobe is amazing. All of that, they really managed to make it feel lived in. And Josh Safdie, who's a phenomenal director and artist, he cast actors off the streets, so that they're literally real people. He found people that looked like they were from the time period that, live in New York, whatever, to really actually capture it. So at its core, the actual production of the film makes it an amazing movie just to look at visually. And that's what adds to the experience, because when you're really in something like that and it feels lived in, you can really then, even if you're not objectively viewing the ideology as it's occurring in front of you, it will seep into your consciousness at some point, most likely, because you're so enthralled in like this masterpiece of visual storytelling and that becomes something that will just rub off on you naturally. And hopefully this is, one of those important things that, can get into the zeitgeist and maybe the younger generation, as we already have this fatigue of social media and AI and all these other, overly stimulating things that are constantly being thrown in our faces. Maybe this will be, a push in the right direction towards, a new renaissance, a new appreciation for real art, a new appreciation for culture, a new appreciation for humanities, and, stop being so self-obsessed. Yes, I misspoke. Self-obsessed. And that's what I think is the most important.